Let's bring you some breaking news that has come to us in the last minute or so from Buckingham Palace. His Majesty, the King, has today initiated a formal process.
The royal family has reportedly taken drastic action against Freddy Parker Bowles, Queen Camilla's grandson, and the order was brutal in its simplicity. You cannot stay here. But the real shock was not that Freddy had been told to leave a private royal residence. It was that Princess Anne had allegedly approved the decision before Camilla even knew it had been made. According to palace insiders, the dispute began with what looked like a harmless family arrangement. Freddy had been permitted to stay at a private royal residence for a limited period, quietly and without ceremony. There was no title attached to the privilege, no official role behind it, and no public announcement. He was simply Camilla's grandson, welcomed through a personal connection that few inside the household were willing to question. Then the agreed period ended. Freddy did not leave. Staff continued preparing rooms, handling small requests, and speaking about future dates as though his presence had become normal. What had started as temporary hospitality was beginning to resemble something more permanent. No one could say exactly when the change had happened. That uncertainty made it worse. Senior aides reportedly became concerned that silence was being mistaken for permission. If Freddy could remain because his grandmother was queen, what would stop other relatives from expecting the same treatment? And once royal access began passing through private family relationships, how could the palace ever restore the boundary without appearing cruel? The distinction around Freddy's position was uncomfortable, but unavoidable. He is the son of Tom Parker Bowles, whose father is Andrew Parker Bowles, Camilla's former husband. Freddy is Camilla's grandson, but he is not King Charles's biological grandson. He holds no royal title, performs no public duty, and has no place in the line of succession. To Camilla, those facts may have sounded like rejection. To senior officials, they explained why the matter could not be ignored. Royal property could not quietly become an extension of Camilla's private family inheritance. Affection might open a door for a visit, but it could not keep that door open forever. Charles reportedly hesitated because he understood the damage the decision could cause. Camilla would not hear a technical discussion about access. She would hear that her children and grandchildren still stood apart, no matter how high she had risen or how close she now sat to the crown. But the pressure was building. Household staff wanted instructions. Advisors wanted clarity, and one senior royal had already decided that the arrangement had crossed a line. Princess Anne was said to have viewed the issue through duty, not sentiment. In her mind, allowing uncertainty to continue would only make the eventual decision harsher. Hi viewers, was Princess Anne right to support Freddy's removal? Yes or no? Leave one word in the comments. And if support for William, Catherine and Anne protecting the monarchy means anything, like this video, share it, and subscribe now. Watching silently while Camilla's side receives every advantage only leaves those standing with Catherine and William unheard. Anne's alleged approval carried unusual weight because she was not known for interfering in minor family disagreements. She had spent decades defending the idea that royal privilege must be tied to service, restraint, and responsibility. Freddy's age did not change the principle. Camilla's feelings did not erase it. A private favor had started creating a public expectation. Sources claim Anne warned that the danger was not one extended stay, it was the precedent taking shape around it. If staff became afraid to question Camilla's relatives, then access would no longer be granted. It would be assumed. And once entitlement became routine, removing it would look like punishment. Camilla, however, reportedly believed Charles was still considering his options. She thought there was time to explain Freddy's position, calm the advisors, and prevent an embarrassing confrontation. What she did not know was that a confidential household record had already been placed before the king. It showed the original departure date had passed, staff could not identify a fresh approval, and future stays were being discussed as though they were guaranteed. The document also showed that staff had begun treating visits as expected rather than requested, a wording change with enormous consequences. To Charles, that suggested the arrangement was no longer being viewed as hospitality, it was becoming a claim, and if he failed to challenge it now, the next conversation would not be about one grandson staying too long, it would be about who controlled the residence itself. Charles read the record in silence. By the time he reached the final page, the issue was no longer whether Freddy had remained a little too long. The real question was far more serious. Who inside Camilla's circle had decided that her grandson no longer needed permission to stay? The answer was buried inside a family history the palace could not afford to ignore. Freddy Parker Bowles was not simply another young relative visiting a grandparent. He was the grandson of the Queen, yet he stood completely outside the royal line. That difference had always existed. Until now, nobody had been forced to say aloud what it meant. Freddy is the son of Tom Parker Bowles, one of the two children Camilla had during her marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles. Her daughter, Laura Lopes, came from that same marriage. Both were part of Camilla's life long before she became queen, and both remained deeply connected to her after she married Charles. Their children were Camilla's grandchildren, but they were not Charles's biological grandchildren, and they had no automatic place within the constitutional structure surrounding the crown. That was the line. For years, the distinction had been softened by family affection. Birthdays were remembered. Invitations were extended. Private gatherings allowed different branches of the family to sit together without titles deciding who mattered most. Inside those rooms, Freddy was simply Camilla's grandson, but a royal residence was different. It carried staff, security, protocol, maintenance, and the silent authority of the monarchy itself. Staying there was not the same as visiting a grandmother's private home. Senior aides reportedly feared that this was exactly where the confusion had begun. Camilla saw the arrangement through the eyes of a grandmother. The household had to see it through rules that would still matter after the current reign ended. If Freddy remained because Camilla wished it, would that access continue later? Would it extend to Tom, Laura, their spouses, or their other children? And who would be blamed when the palace finally said no? Nobody wanted to answer. Charles was said to have asked whether Freddy had personally demanded permanent access. The answer was less comforting than expected. There had been no formal demand, no written request, and no direct declaration that the residence belonged to him. Instead, the problem had developed through assumptions. Dates were mentioned casually, staff were asked about future arrangements, personal belongings remained in place. Each detail seemed harmless alone. Together, they suggested that temporary permission was quietly hardening into expectation. That made the situation harder to confront. A direct demand could have been refused. An assumption had to be exposed first. One household official reportedly warned that the greatest danger was not Freddy's behavior, but the fear surrounding his grandmother's position. Staff did not know whether questioning him would be interpreted as disrespect toward the Queen, so they delayed. Requests were passed upward, decisions were postponed, courtesy became caution, and caution slowly became compliance. Charles understood the pattern immediately. He had spent years watching private family concerns become public constitutional problems because nobody acted at the beginning. Small compromises were easier in the moment. They kept dinners peaceful. They prevented awkward conversations. But eventually, someone inherited the cost, usually when the problem had become too visible to manage quietly. Still, he resisted. Those close to him claimed Charles repeatedly returned to the same concern. Freddy was young. He had not created the unusual structure of his family. He had not chosen to become the Queen's grandson while remaining outside the royal bloodline. Removing him too sharply could make him carry the embarrassment of decisions made by older people around him. Camilla reportedly used that argument when she first sensed the household was becoming uneasy. She insisted Freddy had not behaved as though he owned anything. He had stayed because he had been welcomed, and he had remained because no one had given him a firm date to leave. In her view, the palace was preparing to punish him for accepting kindness. The argument landed. For a moment, Charles appeared to retreat. He asked aides to review the original arrangement, the dates attached to it, and every instruction given afterward. Camilla believed that meant the matter could still be resolved privately, perhaps through a quiet extension followed by a graceful departure. But the review uncovered something she had not expected. The original permission had been clear. The later extension was not. No senior household official could identify who had approved it, yet staff had already begun preparing for Freddy's continued use of the residence. Someone had allowed the arrangement to grow without placing a name beside the decision, and when Charles asked who, the room went silent. That silence told Charles the problem was no longer accidental, and someone feared identification. Charles did not summon Camilla immediately. He kept the file with him and read it again later that evening, away from advisors, away from staff, and away from the pressure of having to react in front of anyone. The details were not dramatic on their own. That was what made them dangerous. There was no single order anyone could point to, no signed approval, no clear moment when a temporary stay became something more. There was only a trail of small assumptions, each one too minor to challenge, yet together forming a pattern Charles could no longer ignore. The residents had continued to be prepared for Freddy. Staff had been instructed to expect him. Future dates had been mentioned, as though permission had already been secured. Personal arrangements had quietly shifted around his presence. Nothing appeared outrageous. Nothing looked urgent. But the entire structure depended on one thing that did not exist: formal authority. The absence of a signature bothered him most. Royal households survived on records, permissions, and clearly defined responsibility. Yet here, everyone had acted while nobody accepted ownership of the decision. That meant either the system had failed, or someone had relied on Camilla's position to make questioning the arrangement impossible. Charles saw the trap. If he accepted the arrangement now, he would be confirming that access could be created through repetition. If he rejected it, Camilla would accuse the palace of changing the rules after Freddy had already been allowed to rely on them. Either choice carried a cost. The difference was that one cost was private and immediate, while the other could follow the monarchy for years. Camilla sensed the change before Charles spoke to her. His tone became measured. Meetings grew shorter. Questions about the residents were answered carefully. She knew the signs. The palace rarely announced that a decision was forming. It simply became colder around the person most affected. So she moved first. At a private dinner, Camilla reportedly raised Freddy's name casually, as though nothing serious was being discussed. She said he had settled well, that he had caused no trouble, and that the household had been unnecessarily nervous. Charles listened without interrupting. That silence unsettled her. She then made the argument personal. Freddy was young. The residence was not being used to capacity. No one had been displaced. No public money, she insisted, was being wasted for some grand private scheme. He was family, and family should not be made to feel like an intruder. Charles replied with one sentence: "The room is not the issue." Camilla understood at once. The argument had moved beyond comfort, space, or courtesy. Charles was now thinking about principle, and principle, once Princess Anne became involved, was far harder to bend. Before making the final decision, Charles sought the views of those he trusted most. William reportedly focused on the future. He warned that every blurred boundary created a harder problem for the next reign. A temporary arrangement today could become an expectation tomorrow, and expectations inside royal households had a habit of becoming grievances when they were finally denied. Anne was more direct. According to sources close to the family, she said crown-connected property could not become a private inheritance through familiarity. She did not accuse Freddy of plotting. She did not question Camilla's love for him. She simply argued that the absence of bad intent did not erase the danger of bad precedent. That was the turning point. Anne had spent decades measuring royal privilege against service. In her view, the equation was simple. Those who carried the burden could justify the access. Those who did not could be welcomed, protected, and loved, but they could not assume the same rights. Freddy's connection to Camilla made him family. It did not make him part of the institution. Camilla was not told about that conversation. Instead, she left dinner believing Charles remained uncertain. She thought his hesitation meant there was still room to negotiate. She even began preparing a gentler solution, one that would allow Freddy to leave later without appearing rejected. Then a short private note arrived on Charles's desk. It was from Anne. The message was brief, but its meaning was unmistakable. Duty had to come before discomfort. Delay would only make the final line harder to draw. Charles read it once. Then he signed the instruction ending Freddy's continued use of the residence. By the time Camilla learned a decision had been made, the household had already received it. The order did not arrive with ceremony. There was no public statement and no dramatic announcement. It moved through the household in the quiet language of administration, which made it feel final. A senior official was instructed to confirm Freddy's departure date. Guest access was to return to its original status. Any future stay would require a fresh invitation, approval, and a defined end date. Staff were also told that no room should remain prepared for him once he left. The instructions were precise. The household stopped behaving as though Freddy's presence could continue by default. Questions once answered casually were redirected. Requests were acknowledged, then held. Dates discussed informally were no longer treated as settled. Freddy noticed the shift almost immediately. A staff member suddenly referred him to the household office. A personal item he expected to leave behind was placed with the rest of his belongings. Even the tone around him changed. Nobody was rude, nobody needed to be. The formality delivered the message. Something had closed. Camilla learned what was happening through staff, not from Charles. That detail cut deeply. She had believed the matter remained under discussion. Instead, the decision was already being enforced around her, one instruction at a time. She went to Charles before the household could complete the arrangements. The confrontation was controlled at first. Camilla asked whether the departure date had been fixed. Charles said it had. She asked whether the order could be delayed. Charles said it could not. Then her restraint broke. She accused him of turning a private family matter into a display of exclusion. Freddy had not forced his way into the residence, she argued. He had been welcomed. He had remained because nobody told him the invitation had ended. Removing him now made it appear he had taken something never his. Charles answered that the problem was not Freddy's intention. It was the assumption growing around him. A royal residence could not become permanent through silence, no matter how innocent that silence first appeared. That answer did not calm her. Camilla asked the question Charles had hoped to avoid. Would he have acted with the same speed if one of his own biological grandchildren had remained longer than expected? The room changed. Charles did not answer immediately. He knew any reply would wound her. If he said yes, she might not believe him. If he said no, he would confirm her deepest fear that the line was not about property, but blood. So he returned to duty. He said any relative without an official role would face the same boundary. Family affection could not decide who gained continuing access to crown-connected property. The rule had to survive personal feelings, or it was not a rule. Camilla heard the words. She also heard what was missing. No reassurance. And for those who believe Anne was right to defend that boundary, this is the moment to like, share, and subscribe. Staying silent while Camilla's family receives sympathy allows the people standing with William, Catherine, and Anne to be drowned out. Support is how that side remains visible. By then, Freddy had been told only that changes were being made. He had not heard the full reason, and he had not been invited into the discussions taking place around him. When he approached Camilla, his question was simple. Had he done something wrong? She told him no, not in the way he feared. She said the dispute concerned rules, expectations, and people inside the palace who believed his stay had come to represent more than it should have. That explanation confused him further. He had not asked for a title. He had not claimed the residence. He had not announced that he belonged there forever. From his perspective, he had accepted what the family allowed. Freddy then asked to speak with Charles directly. Camilla supported the request. She believed a face-to-face conversation might expose how impersonal the process had become, and perhaps force Charles to see the young man beneath the constitutional argument. Charles agreed, but he set one condition. The meeting would be private, with no advisors, no household officials, and no one available to soften the words that had to be said. Camilla insisted on being present. Charles did not refuse. The time was fixed. The room was chosen, and as Freddy prepared to hear the decision from the king himself, Camilla did not know that Anne's private approval had helped make that decision irreversible. The meeting took place in a private sitting room. No advisors stood, no secretaries waited with papers. Charles had chosen a room meant for family conversation rather than royal business. That choice stripped away ceremony and left only 3 people facing one another: the king, Camilla, and Freddy Parker Bowles. Freddy entered expecting an explanation. Camilla entered hoping there was still room to change the outcome. Charles entered, knowing the decision had already been enforced. Nobody spoke. Charles began by telling Freddy that the original arrangement had always been temporary. The residence had been offered for a limited stay, not as an ongoing entitlement, and the household should have made that distinction clearer earlier. Freddy asked why he was being treated as though he had ignored a rule no one had explained. It was the question Charles had anticipated. He replied that the failure to speak sooner belonged to the adults and officials, but delay could not become permanent consent. The fact that nobody challenged the stay immediately did not mean the residence had become available without limit. Freddy pushed back. He said he had never asked for a title, demanded staff, or claimed ownership of anything. He had stayed because his family allowed him to stay. If the palace now believed that was wrong, then the palace had created the confusion. Camilla seized on that point. She told Charles that Freddy was being made to carry the weight of a dispute he did not create. The household had opened the door, staff had supported the arrangement. Now everyone was behaving as though he had crossed a line alone. Charles did not deny the unfairness. That surprised them both. He admitted the matter should have been handled sooner. Freddy deserved a direct answer, which was why the meeting was taking place without intermediaries. But the answer could no longer be postponed because the delay had made it painful. The room tightened around them. Freddy asked the question Camilla feared most. Did Charles consider him family? Charles looked at him before answering. He said family affection was not the issue. Freddy was part of Camilla's family, and through marriage he was connected to Charles. But connection did not create constitutional standing, official responsibility, or an automatic claim to royal property. The distinction sounded careful. It also sounded final. Freddy asked whether blood was the real reason. Would the answer have been different if he had been born Charles's biological grandson? Camilla watched her husband closely. Charles said the same rule had to apply to anyone without an official basis for continued residence. Then he added that refusing to draw the line now would guarantee a harsher humiliation later. Freddy looked down. Camilla did not. She told Charles that dignity could have been preserved without turning the departure into an order. He could have allowed Freddy to leave quietly, on a date chosen together, without making him feel removed. Charles answered that every softer option depended on the same thing, another extension. Then came the sentence that ended the argument. You cannot stay here. He did not raise his voice. He did not repeat himself. The words landed harder because they were spoken calmly. Freddy turned toward Camilla. His expression asked for the defense she had promised without words. She reached for him, but before she could speak, he asked Charles whether the decision had been his alone. Charles said senior members of the family had been consulted. Camilla's face changed. She asked which members. Charles hesitated once. Then he named Anne. The silence that followed was different from the silence at the beginning. That first silence had contained hope. This one contained recognition. Camilla understood what Anne's support meant. This was no longer a private disagreement she could reverse through patience or persuasion. Anne had given the decision moral weight inside the family, and Charles had acted with that protection behind him. Camilla asked whether Anne had approved it before she was told. Charles did not answer. He did not need to. Freddy rose first. He thanked Charles with a politeness so controlled that it made the moment colder. Then he looked at Camilla, not with anger, but with the stunned expression of someone realizing the outcome had been settled before he entered the room. When the door closed behind him, Camilla remained seated. Her next question was quieter. How long had Anne known? Charles looked toward the papers on the side table, and in that pause, Camilla understood the betrayal. Camilla did not challenge Charles again that evening. The decision had moved beyond argument, and she knew it. What remained was the damage. Freddy's departure was arranged without ceremony. No photographers waited. No public statement explained why he was leaving. His belongings were gathered, the guest arrangements were closed, and the residents returned to the control of the household. From the outside, almost nothing appeared to have happened. Inside, everything had changed. Camilla reportedly withdrew from the officials who had handled the order. Conversations became shorter. Invitations were answered through staff. She did not openly accuse Anne, but those around her noticed that Anne's name was no longer mentioned with the same warmth. For Camilla, the decision had exposed a truth she had spent years trying to soften. Becoming queen had raised her position, but it had not transformed her children or grandchildren into royal heirs. Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes remained her children from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles. Their children remained connected to the king through marriage, not blood, title, or constitutional duty. That distinction now had consequences. Charles was said to feel the weight of it almost immediately. He had protected the boundary, but he had also forced Camilla to confront the limits of her family's place inside the monarchy. He could tell himself the decision was about property. She could still experience it as rejection. Anne did not withdraw her support. According to those close to her, she believed Charles had acted late, not harshly. Kindness had been allowed to drift into expectation because everyone feared an uncomfortable conversation. In Anne's view, that was how royal problems became permanent. Someone delayed, someone assumed. Then the next generation was left to untangle what the previous one had been too nervous to define. Her position was simple. Access was not inheritance. Freddy could be welcomed at family occasions. He could remain loved by his grandmother. He could be treated with courtesy and respect. But none of those things gave him an automatic right to remain inside a crown-connected residence after the original arrangement had ended. That message traveled quickly through the wider family. Relatives who had once treated private access casually began asking for clearer approval. Household staff became more careful about recording dates, permissions, and responsibilities. What happened to Freddy became a warning without ever becoming an official policy. The palace had drawn a line. William reportedly supported the principle behind it. Catherine did not need to enter the dispute publicly for her position to matter. The future of the monarchy depended on clearer boundaries, fewer informal promises, and a firm separation between those who served the institution and those connected to it privately. That was why Anne's approval mattered so much. She had not simply sided with Charles against Camilla. She had endorsed a standard William could carry into his own reign. No duty, no automatic privilege. For viewers who believe Anne protected William and Catherine's future from private entitlement, this is the moment to prove it. Like the video, share it, and subscribe. Watching in silence while others defend every advantage given to Camilla's family only leaves the people standing with William, Catherine, and Anne unheard. The final consequence was not Freddy leaving one residence. It was the message sent to every relative watching from the edges of royal life. Marriage could bring closeness. Affection could bring invitations, but neither could quietly create ownership. What looked like one private departure had become a constitutional signal, delivered quietly, remembered clearly, and understood by everyone who expected the rules to bend eventually. Camilla had wanted Freddy to feel that he belonged. Charles had just defined exactly where that belonging ended, and Anne had made sure the line would hold. But the next royal dispute may cut even deeper. Reports now suggest Camilla challenged a separate household decision involving another member of her family, and this time, Catherine's name appeared in the private papers. The most revealing detail was a handwritten note beside the request, carrying only 3 words. William said no. That document, who placed it there, and why Camilla was never meant to see it, will be revealed in the next video.